Hi there, my name is Elizabeth. I'm from Liz Jewel Heart 2, and welcome. And on this Labor Day, I thought I would take the opportunity to read you a story, and the story is called The Scholars of Ascension. And it's a short story, and I've read it into three parts. And basically, it is a fictional story about some characters at a school. The part that's not fiction, I would say, is just location, because the school is located in Africa, and it's also specifically located in the province of Katet, which actually is a place. It is located in Angola. It's a province of Angola. So, but this story really is about how artwork can inspire us all. It can inspire us personally, or can inspire our work, whether we're musicians or artists ourselves, or we could be writers, which is also artistry. I believe that's more like humanities, but it can also inspire you as a teacher. you know um, uh, it also just it's one of those wonderful things that can offer us comfort in this world, and especially towards challenging times. So I am going to read you these stories in three parts, and I really hope that you enjoy them. Again, the story is called The Scholars of the Ascension. Please enjoy. The Scholars of the Ascension. There once were two people, Joy and Maculeta. They did not know each other, but one day they would. There are many things in this world we find happening rather mysteriously. We can ask the question, how do things develop the way they do? How do they work out in the end? However did it get started? Or how do our circumstances lead into other conditions, and then finally getting us to our destinies? And finally, how on earth do airplanes get themselves off the ground and fly? There is the object of engineering, but planes are heavy, even more so with a mass of people and their luggage. It is a mystery, but the mystery we want to explore in this story is how we as people come to meet one another far across the hills, mountains, and lands, all to bring us to one central place, a place where we come to commune, where we share, where we become comrades in a labor of self-discovery and sanctity. The story begins in a corner of the land in Africa, of a province called Bengal. And in that province, we go to the location of a town called Katet. In the middle of the palm and imbondiero trees was an extensive stucco and stone building that stretched miles and miles on the grounds. It was a beautiful landscape, surrounded with cashew trees and bean bushes that gave the building a look of rich abundances and bounty. This building opened the doors to the budding persons who wanted to bring out the greatest possibilities within themselves. It was the scholastic center where participants would begin to unveil their natural talents, their innermost gifts, their lives' quests, so that they may return to their homelands and share their work with others around them and with the world. The center was called the Ascension. The center mostly drew in artists, writers, nonprofit leaders, housewives, house husbands, but the Ascension invited anyone who would work hard to find their true selves and what the universe asked of them. But as it is now, and as it was then, the doors were open to people who wanted to grow their faculty, but for some reason were afraid to do so. As a result, the Ascension created methods of meditation, research, the practice in speaking about one's discoveries, and furthermore, to write and allow all the thoughts to be transferred on paper and to then take in the effects and live it. These methods were a part of allowing the scholars words on whatever he or she had imagined or summoned to the mind to be descriptive of the mystery of their development. Once this is done, a picture is created for them so that they may see the color, the vision of their life ahead. Sounds complicated and very difficult, yes. The scholars who partook in discovering their purposes in life would come to know the hard work one must do to get to the core of one's being and finding that gift inside, that untapped essence within. It is strenuous, tedious, and sometimes downright aggravating. But the remembrance of why these scholars have come to this place and why they were there put their minds and hearts into perspective. In this story, we shall see how these participants found it to be a worthwhile journey to get to and reach. For it was a labor of love that made them come to this place, to make the difference in their lives by sharing with the many people of the world their new oaths of nurturing their craft. Inside the building of the Ascension, a great deal of art and messages were placed around for all to see in the halls and on the walls, which were made to motivate each new participant into building their skills and to strengthening their quests. Different types of published works were stationed around the building. There were paintings depicting scholars who started off as confused and inexperienced individuals, which were created in the background of the paintings. But in the foreground of the paintings were scholars who reached the point of triumph over their obstacles and setbacks. There were also statues, some made of marble, wood, and most unusually, cloth. There was also a bronze statue of a woman sitting with their heads down, looking dejected. But in back of them was a woman standing, wearing a draped robe made entirely of beads. Her arms were open wide as if to embrace the two in despair, only to comfort them in their sorrow and doubt. Then there were works that were non-traditional. There were sets of stone pillars along the halls. On the pillars were busts of cloth dolls. There were beaded cloth sculptures. They were adorned with a pattern of glass seed beads on midnight and earth-colored fabric. The colors of the beads seemed to shine like a ray of sun, which added contrast to the lightly dim hallways. The effect was pronouncedly dramatic. There were also dolls of kings dressed in green velour. The doll depicting the king was made in representation of a fable called the 8 African Kings. These were the testament to the beauty of a flourishing world, and that was the world that Joy Gizoto wanted to be a part of. Joy was a budding illustrator and statue creator. She created sculptures using all materials and hoped one day she could exhibit them all over the world, and soon people would want them especially made from the hands of Joy Kizito, which is pronounced Kashito. With her illustrations, she would create books of her artwork to reach many. It was a dream, but she wanted it to be a reality. She heard of the scholars of the Ascension from her grandfather many years ago when she was little. He talked gently of those times when he was at the center, and he hoped that his people would finally reach it. But the problem was some people could not find it. It was not on the map. It was not on the main roads. There were no points of reference. In fact, people started to think it did not exist. But how is it that some people knew about it? Mostly, it was believed from the young people that it was just some sort of myth made up by the elders. A tale to tell the young people of Africa to study hard and stay in school. But what it seemed to be is that the Ascension called to certain people, individuals who were searching. They were searching for the very thing that Ascension wanted their participants to find, their destiny. That is why Joy came to be at this center of training, of discipline, and of self-discovery. But she also came because this was her chance to answer the call of her awakening light, of all the unspoken words and thoughts that she had yet to tap into. Joy walked into the large Stonehenge entrance and into a long marble hall where other participants were in line with their cases, chattering away. She stood shyly for a moment with her luggage, juggling everything at once, looking as nervous and confused as some of her fellow scholars. She turned to look where she came, shielding herself from the bright sun that streamed through the doorway by taking her delicate brown hand over her equally brown face. She turned back to the hall and observed the line and looked to see what it was for. But as she walked toward it, she soon found it was the registration line. All participants were asked to check in. As Joy got in line, she noticed that there were students from different countries, but mostly from Africa, based on her hearing some of the languages and noticing the choice of attire. The hall was crowded with talking men and women looking around nervously. The last of the participants was a tall man with skin of midnight who walked in quietly with his cases in hand, watching silently at the crowd of people. He got in line behind the participants. One of them was Joy. No, they did not meet, not yet, especially now that there was such a distraction of noise, and the fact of being in a new place put them in a position where they felt much like a fish out of water. But let it be known that things do change under circumstances, and therefore we will see how the story unfolds. After the participants registered, they were escorted to their private quarters to settle in and then later go to the Diamond Rotunda, where they would be received in welcome and orientation to the Ascension. And finally, supper. As the participants walked down the halls to their quarters, each observed the works of previous scholars before them. There was quite a bit of oohing and eyeing as they pointed out to each other the artists and their creations. When it was time for the participants to head for the rotunda, they were alerted by a bell and were escorted by some of the staff members who were dressed in blue bus and matching small caps. They entered the Diamond Rotunda and received information on their seating arrangements. As they were directed through the aisles of the rotunda, an astonished look came upon the faces of the participants as they entered the massive room they were in. It was a round auditorium that looked like a world conference room. The Diamond Rotunda was rather large, circular, and capsule-shaped room. Seats were stretched all around, only to leave a huge, round, spiral bowl in the center of everything. And in the center of the spiral bowl was a large 40-foot oval statue made of obsidian. On the oval obsidian statue were hieroglyphics. Below the symbols was an inscription around the middle of the symbols. It read, "Share the gifts given by the gods. The debutants." It was a cryptic message, to say the least, so it seemed by the looks on each of the individual participants' faces. It also deemed to be an amusing message. The participants made their way around the deep blue and oval-shaped seats that looked and felt like pincushions. Everyone found the seat on which he or she was most comfortable, and then Joy sat towards the front, eager to learn everything she could. Maculetta sat in the middle of the many rows just to take in the atmosphere and all the experiences this place could possibly give. As you may know, that when you first start school, maybe in a classroom or a lecture hall, people either sit far away from each other or they sit in cliques or groups. There are some who sit alone. The center had a different order in mind. When all the participants were seated comfortably, the lights dimmed, with the exception of a bright blue light that shined in the center of the spiral bowl and onto the oval obsidian statue. Then quite suddenly, the chairs began to move, closing the gaps of the aisles, and for the few seats that were empty, they moved and descended into the floor, bringing the occupied seats closer together with other occupant seats until everyone was grouped together. You can imagine the surprise on the faces of the participants seeing rows that had no one seated in them disappear into the floor, moving the rows with people in them slowly forward and back. There was a wave of nervous energy from the participants. Some looked around shockingly, others laughed and hooted out loud, and when the seats came to a halt, everyone looked around. Everyone looked around as they saw others having their seat sections change and seeing the reactions to their faces. It was a clever device because it gave people the opportunity to talk to each other, even to people they didn't know at all. As the participants chattered away, the lights flickered. The oval-shaped statue glistened, and the inscription lit up like laser lights. The seats slowly rotated around the oval obsidian statue. The blue light widened onto the statue, and the spiral bowl was in center. The oval statue slowly opened up. In the middle of the oval statue stood a very tall man. He was dressed in a deep sapphire blue cassock that seemed to illuminate against his midnight skin. His hair was gray and his face was etched, and his eyes were filled with wisdom. "Good afternoon, fellow pupils, and the Ascension staff," he said in a deep and strong voice. "I am Reverend Sagarp Adao Madela. You may call me Reverend." Everyone chuckled. The Reverend smiled. "I am glad you are responsive to my dry humor. As my name is quite difficult for some, I thought I would begin with that introduction. Welcome, everyone. Welcome." During the Reverend's speech, a few things were happening. The seats began to move slowly around the statue once again. The seats were circling the Reverend so that each group of the participants could have a better chance to hear and see the Reverend's face and gestures. Then there was the matter of the walls. On the walls of the rotunda, there were gray granite square tiles that were rotating. Individual ones were flipping and turning and making gentle clicking sounds, and if you listened long enough, it almost sounded like drops of water. The Reverend then began his orientation of the Ascension Center. "In this place, you will learn not just about the artist in you or the skills you have or will acquire. No, it is about what is inside of you. You and the aura of your making of that of which surrounds you are the gifts that you will bring to many. Here, your gifts will gain momentum. Your gifts and talents will stretch far and wide, further than your imagination has ever taken you. You will not only learn to represent the best in you, the best you are, you will also be able to pull from all forms of inspiration to create the master within and who you are meant to be in the light of the Mighty One.
Now, be warned, this is not an easy task. It is a life's work to make it and to perfect it. In this world, perfection is what we aim for, but it should be the last thing we think of because it is not important. What is important is that you know where your energies come from to help you succeed. On the walls you will see this. Look on the walls, said the Reverend, and he raised his arms, palms facing upward and presenting the magnificent tiles. They were turning. This wall is called the wall of acclamation. On these walls are heavy granite, clay, and engraved plates of each participant that has ever passed through the Ascension Center. When an individual has responded to his or her calling, or has succeeded in starting, or has been staying on a course to develop their given gifts, the tiles will turn at all times, indicating to us that they have done what our mission has asked them to do. As you will see, however, that there are some that are not flipping or turning. It is because the former participants did not wish to continue on their path, or they let the fear interject and overcome them. It is a great misfortune to see our scholars lose hope in the world, for they do not believe that they can continue. And also, there is the belief that, or disbelief, that there will always be someone there to help them on their journey. But it does happen in life. But the worst that has happened is when a scholar uses his or her gifts for not so good causes. And when this happens, the plate will crack, fall to the ground, and thus be replaced by another scholar worthy of that spot. And the memory of our teachings are no longer in the minds of those participants whose plates have cracked. Now, I don't want to have you feel discouraged about the events of others. It is difficult to task to follow one's dreams and one's heart's aspirations, but with our assistance, your determination and perseverance, your mindset to respect the life of your discipline and vocation and oaths you make, you will be on your way to fulfilling your destiny. The plates turn in various points of speed, some fast, some medium fast, and others steady. It depends on the timing you wish to take in this time of self-discovery and advancement. When the Reverend said this, the participants noticed that some of the tiles on the walls were flipping faster. There were others that were flipping and turning each way in a while, and then there were some that remained still. This is your time to make a difference, said Reverend Mandela. And with that, the light upon the ceiling of the rotunda created one big star above and shone brightly. Then, when the light quickly faded away, Reverend Mandela had disappeared. Everyone stood up from their seats, astonished that he had gone without them knowing. The participants talked incessantly in their wonderment of the Reverend's sudden disappearance until, "Dear participants of the Ascension, welcome. You will listen closely as we are about to give out schedules for the time you are here with us." Everyone quieted down. The voice came from a woman. She was medium height, wearing a cotton African gown and a cap of a soft rose color. She wore a traditional African head wrap, which matched her gown and cap and went well with her skin of deep brown amber. Her name was Makiba Mirma. She seemed to float across the room as she directed the rest of the staff to hand out the schedules. The staff members were dressed in emerald green capes and gowns, almost with matching head wraps. For the men, they wore small head caps instead. The schedules were headed out and they were looked upon with amusement. There seemed to be nothing to them. In truth, there was nothing on them. It was a blank slate made of rose quartz. In the center was the same obsidian oval shape. "Now I know that you are not able to see everything on your slate," she said, hearing the soft mumblings from the participant. "All you have to do is take your mallets that come with your slate and tap it onto the oval. It will then be revealed to you what you will do and will be doing for the days ahead. When you have a free day, it means that you may choose an activity you wish or feel the need to do. If you want to see the schedule for the entire day, tap 2 times. If you want to see the days ahead, tap 3 times. If you want directions, tap 4 times, and so on and so on." Many of the participants tried it. Joy tried her slate and saw a library on her schedule. It also told her the location of the library and how to get there. She looked around and saw other participants checking their schedules to see what their lessons would be. And with the sensation of it all, they shared with each other what they had on a particular day. Some of the schedules said lecture, some said free time, others said meal time, some said prayer. One person actually got one that said nap time. Malcoletta tapped his, and it revealed library. "And now, you may follow the staff to the dining room hall, where your supper has been prepared for you." The participants got up from their seats and followed the staff to the dining hall. Joy looked at the walls as the plates flipped and turned in their own different timing. She stood there with a concentration and hope that her plate would be there, turning continuously. The participants walked through the halls to the dining hall. As they walked, the participants absorbed more of the artwork that decorated the halls and walls and corners. There were large, leather-bound, open books encased in glass. There were first published books written by past scholars of the Ascension. There were more paintings along the hall walls that depicted self-discovery. There were also handmade dolls from artists, which were constructed with colorful beads. There were also sculptures and statues all along the halls of the Ascension, were the monuments that were set out to inspire the new participants in expressing their best while they were attending the center. As the participants continued to walk the halls, they came upon an entrance of a very tall and large stones that acted as pillars on each side of the doorway. It was the opening to the dining hall. They continued in, which brought them into a large foyer. As they were about to enter the dining hall, above them were writings written on the dome, which arched over the doorway. It read, "What would you do in less modern times?" Joy raised her eyebrows at this and began to wonder, does this mean that they were going to be living like they were in the ancient times? Were they supposed to be roughing it? Was the meal made with less known food? There were worse things that could happen, but when someone's messing with your food, thought Joy, it's not perceived as a laughing matter. They entered into the dining hall and saw that the very same large and stone surrounded the whole entire room. It was a Stonehenge. It was a very ancient looking, but nevertheless it added some sense of wonderment and mystery to the atmosphere. However, one couldn't help but think about the message at the doorway. With looks of weariness, the participants sat down together at a very large mahogany table that had hand-carved spiral designs on the legs and on the edges of the table. There were high-backed chairs with padded seats for comfort. Everyone sat at his or her own place of choice. When the supper arrived, it seemed that the sign above the archway was not to be taken seriously to heart, for the meal was sumptuous. All that they hoped for was granted and more. It proved to be a wonderful evening, and although the participants may not have picked up from the presentation of the hall, there was a celebration and toast to their beginnings as pupils and a head start on their chosen paths.